Hello everybody again. Welcome back to Module 2. This is Lecture 2. We are going to be talking about other kinds of variables that we haven't yet discussed. Hopefully by now you see that when we are planning a study, especially an experiment, it's important, in fact vital, not only to know what our independent and dependent variables are. Hopefully you remember what those are. The independent variable is the causal variable, and the dependent variable is the outcome or measured variable. But it's also important to define them specifically in terms of their concepts and operations, like we talked about last time. And this directly relates to their level of measurement. And I won't go into that right now, but just think about it. If I'm going to measure memory by number of words remembered, that's a ratio level variable because it's a frequency. So we'll talk about that more later. Just a quick review for you. Okay, so we've already talked about the independent dependent variable. There are a few other kinds of variables that you should know about. Pretty much most of the ones that we're going to cover here should be just about it for the semester. So control variables are variables that are held constant. They are things that are kept the same across the conditions of an experiment. So for example, we always keep the wall color the same when we do our experiment. We do the experiment in the same room. We use the same researcher every time for our experiment. That way we can't say that the messiness and the changes that happen because of these different variables are interfering with the quality of our experiment. So an experiment is a very controlled situation. We want to hold as many variables constant as possible, and again, only measure the ones that we're manipulating. Or sorry, we only want to change the ones we are specifically, purposefully manipulating. So control variables then are anything like time of day that we run the experiment, or experimenter, or outfit. That's one of the reasons the lab coat is important, so that we don't dress really awesome one day and then have a bad, hair day and look crazy the next. That could somehow influence the outcome of our study. So we want to be as uniform as possible. That's control variables. Extraneous variables are what we're trying to avoid and hold a constant. That's what we're trying to control. They are outside variables in our environment, environmental factors that we're not interested in. They're things like planes flying overhead. Let's see, there's so many things. Again, wall color, attractiveness of the experimenter, outfits of the experimenter, mood of the experimenter. Not all those things we can control, but some of them we can. So when we're talking about control variables, they're essentially the opposite of an extraneous variable, which is just anything out there in the world that we don't want interfering with our cozy little protected experiment, because it just threatens our ability to say that it was done well and there were no outside influences. Okay, now a confounding variable is very, very bad. It's a very specific kind of extraneous variable. It's an outside variable that's not relevant to the hypothesis or the study at hand, and yet it systematically varies, usually by accident, or sometimes students just don't follow directions. And it goes exactly with the independent variable. So for example, if you have two conditions, fear and no fear, and I want to see if fear causes affiliation, then if I gave all of my fear condition people a really beautiful room to do their study in, and all my no fear people a really ugly room to do their experiment in, then I wouldn't be able to tell whether it was the room or the condition that they were in, the fear, my causal variable, that was actually causing a change. If I find a change, which one is it? I have confounded two variables. The one that I'm interested in is fear, but I have now this other variable that also has perfectly varied with that one. So I can't make up my mind. I can't decide. This whole experiment is ruined. Another example, a student way back had an experiment. She had two conditions. Can't remember, I think one of them was a humorous condition and one of them was a non-humorous condition. And because of convenience, she went to a criminal justice class and gave out her humorous condition, and then she went to a business class to hand out her non-humorous condition, And then she looked at her results and came up with these really interesting things. And then I found out, oh no, we don't know whether it's the type of people who take criminal justice classes versus business classes. They might differ in some ways, probably. Or if it's in fact the humor level that actually caused the outcome. So that's what a confounding variable is. It's something outside the experiment of interest that accidentally usually goes along with the independent variable perfectly, so that we can't disaggregate them, we can't separate them. And so therefore we cannot infer causality, and our experiment is ruined. Okay, and then finally, subject variables, sometimes also called random variables. We're going to use random so many different ways in this class, but generally I try to be good about it. A random variable is a variable that is one that a subject brings with him or her, or a participant brings with him or her to the study. So whether they had breakfast or not, what they look like, how they feel about different things, all their attitudes, their personality, all those different things come into play, and those are all subject variables, or also random variables. So again, people are not variables, but they have variables. They have height, they have attitudes, they have beliefs, they have poverty or wealth, all those things they bring with them. Those are subject variables. So hopefully you can understand now the several different types of variables that you'll need to know for the semester, and I will see you next time.